we put him in the pool. I swam the water run pretty well. I'm a good swimmer. I did respectably well. And then he got in and he didn't lift his head above the water for 70 feet. It was like 70 feet's too short.
The whole thing is 6 strokes, I think.
Yeah, no, it's just magnificent on high speed. He just whoosh. And then we put him in the syrup, and he kept pinballing off the sides because his thing is, the reason he doesn't take his head out of the water is because he's looking at the line at the bottom, and he swims the line. And we had no idea this was a marker. We were like, oh my God. And then we got to the end of that and we realized we had to throw out his results because he's so unadaptable.
The water was cloudy, and although they had done a pretty good job digging these trenches, there was a little slight bias to it.
So here's the thing.
Dashing off the sides.
So here's the thing. It turns out that this absolute master of one skill, wow, I'm doing a callback. This absolute master of one skill turns out to not be as good at comparative swimming as I am. In my generalist floppy way.
Rest is a little bitter.
Yeah, whatever.
The thing speaks for itself.
The other reason that it's hard to shoot is that we curse like sailors. And are there any just children in the audience, right? No? All right, kids, just remember, if you think cursing is cool, it's only cool for adults. So my son comes to work this summer for a week. I kept my kids out of camp for about half the summer, so they kept on coming to work with me day in, day out. And they're old enough now that they're having fun, and they get along. So Addison, my smaller twin, is sitting next to Alice, my director. And Alice goes, Addison, come here and sit next to me. Sit down right here. Now, you're going to have to watch our language because we have a child outside. Dennis, we need to move the bomb location from Alameda to the landfill. Does that fuck you? And Addison's just sitting there like... And so we've actually tried to film it a couple of times. We've set up cameras, eye in the sky sort of thing, and the process, I can't do it. I can't be 100%, there's a level of honesty and then there's a level of honesty. And for me, when I'm plotting out a story, it is a frustrating process. Jamie and I and Alice, we argue it out. We actually get on each other's nerves, and that's part of the process. We recognize that, but it's difficult. I can't even write it down. I have to work it out on the whiteboard. So often the way we do it is that I write it down on the whiteboard. Jamie looks up and says, why are we doing this whole story? It's stupid. Then we argue back and forth. I make my case. Alice is the one always saying, right, but why? What is the question? What is the myth? How are you phrasing the myth, and how are you approaching that phrase in the first, second, and third acts of the show? She's beautiful the way she hones us into that specificity. Maybe there's a way to work it into the show where we can see that process happen, but it's very difficult to catch that moment. Also, the aha moment, the whole purpose of shooting it would be to get to this moment, which happens frequently where, I'm trying to think of the last time it happened. We're working on something, Jamie and I are both, for us there's problems we know we're going to be able to solve and problems we're not sure how to solve. So sometimes it's like, well, we got to dig a hole. I don't even have to think about the equipment needed because I know digging a hole is a relatively trivial problem. It's equipment, it's how big the hole is the only factor. But there are other problems like, how am I going to load the duct tape bridge into the loading dock that requires a whole set of steps that are really specific, so that Jamie and I will both be thinking about this for days before we get there. We'll be making diagrams and little models and talking about it and arguing back and forth, really arguing about ways to do it until there's this moment, and this would be almost impossible to wait long enough to catch us on film, where we both go, oh, of course it's this way, you just do this like this and this like this, and the other one goes, oh, that's brilliant, let's just do it.
Yeah, well, that's the problems of writing. I think about when I was writing for a Penn and Teller series years ago, not bullshit, but the series before that on FX called Penn and Teller's Sin City Spectacular, which was a variety show. And sitting in the writer's room, 5 of us, and figuring out how to write a piece, figuring out how to write a bit. I mean, it's sloppy. You can't. It's really hard to trap those moments. Really hard to capture those.
The moment. You know what it looks like? You've seen Good Will Hunting. Remember that great bit where Will and Stellan Skarsgård have this big mathematical equation on the board, and they're crossing out functions on the board, back and forth, and it's like they're playing tennis with math on the board. And there's this point at which they and put up a symbol and they high-five. And it's beautiful. It's like high-fiving over math. That is awesome. And that's sort of
right. So like that is incomprehensible to anyone watching.
Exactly.
As a witness. When I first asked you, I just want to bring it back for a moment. When I first asked you about this thing, the connection between these very practical maker skills and your art, and this interest in objects, this crystallized for me when I saw the lead balloon. And I didn't see it. I rarely see the.
My favorite episode.
I rarely see the show when it actually airs. I catch it here and there, and I think it was sometime after it first aired that I saw it, and it was so beautiful. I don't know if you remember. I actually texted you at the time. I said, "This is the most beautiful thing you've ever done. This makes me cry. This is like art." And you wrote back saying, "I'm so glad. This is like probably my favorite thing." But what's interesting about it is, I mean, even though in a way you could say it's sort of it's almost not a pun, but it's it seemed like a piece of conceptual art.
Well, no, that's actually, yeah, when the show's at its best, it's totally exactly that.
Right.
We're doing these large-scale conceptual art pieces that no one's ever tried before. And then the reason that's my favorite episode is because that was one where it required both Jamie and I to put the totality of difficulty of assembling this lead, which is like wet toilet paper in its consistency. And not only is it like wet toilet paper, but if you pick up a piece and drop it, and then you pick it up and look at it, look through it, the very act of crumpling causes holes to form in the lead that will propagate. So you literally have to roll it out and then move it flat in flat planes. Otherwise you're screwed. So the degree to which we spent this, well, it took 2 years to find a company that could make the lead thin enough, but in the final 2-week sleuths into the actual shooting of that thing, for us, that process of thinking through all the contingencies, and even down to how do you repair a small hole that's appearing?
Right.
And Jamie was like, oh, well, we could take a piece of lead in our hand and spray now, just like a spray glue around the hole that's forming, and spray glue on the piece that's on your hand, and just kind of waft it into place. And it worked fantastically. Because you can't get behind it, you have to just, everything has to meet and get along really quickly.
Right.
And that's where knowing 19 different kinds of glues and their properties in my head becomes the most fun. Because with him, when we get to that point of the discussion, that's the place where also it's like there's no actual nouns being used. I'm like, well, if the thing was that, and he goes, yeah. Actually, this is a great one. We're just about to walk across the duct tape bridge, and I'm the first one walking. The bridge is 100 feet long, and it's 44 feet off the deck. And I've got a tether that's basically like a car seat belt. It'll allow me to walk slowly and pull the tether out, but if I jerk hard on it, it'll stop me. So if the bridge gives way, it'll stop me before I hit the ground. But only after I've traveled about 15 feet in. Because 44 feet, half of 100 feet, if the bridge fails the moment I step on it, I'm swinging, I'm going to hit the bottom. Now I've already realized this, but I haven't told anyone about it because really no one needs to know. Now, no one needs to know because it'll just freak everyone out.
Right, and you're confident.
And I know that this bridge won't fail in the first 15 feet. If it does, I'm just running. So, this is like, we have a fantastic team that helps like calm the insurance company down, and we do try to think through every contingency. But in this case, there I am, I'm realizing, okay, I have to get about 10 feet up. And just before I walk, Jamie goes, by the way, and I said, I know, I thought of that too.
Oh.
It's like, so just get there, and I said, I know.
Oh, that's so great! I love that. I love that.
That's where, as much as that guy shits me, it's like, that's the strength of the partnership, where that's a lovely, lovely little...
Well, that reminds me, isn't at the end of Lead Balloon, if I'm not mistaken, there's a moment, unless there's something you told me about, isn't there a moment on camera where he it's a little unusual moment where he sort of gives you props for solve the thing?
Well, it's
I remember it as a bit of an odd, unusual, not odd, but a moment we don't see very often.
Right. Well, and I had so lead balloon. The problem I talked about before, which is that the lead had to be rolled out and moved in flat planes, meant that you couldn't just tape together a bag.
Right.
Because the bag would have holes in it. You had to move flat sheets and assemble them flat in ways where they moved only laterally. So I was thinking first, I actually had the researchers bring in the head of the San Francisco Origami Club. And then I realized, no, origami is all about folding. I don't need folding, I need taping. And then I thought, you know what? This is one of these problems where I didn't know what it was going to be. So I kept on rolling it over in my head. And finally one day I was like, I just need to sit down with some squares and triangles. I know that, it's 6 squares. I can break them into X number of triangles.